जय गुरुदेव भुवनेश सर।
हाँ जय गुरुदेव, जय गुरुदेव। जय
सर
गुरुदेव।
आप बोलोगे ना, ये मुकेश पंडित जी करके हैं वहां पे, वो चैंटिंग अपने वहां से चालू कर देंगे। जय गुरुदेव भुवनेश सर।
हाँ जय गुरुदेव, कहाँ कहाँ से चालू करेंगे? यहाँ यहाँ पे तो कोई पंडित नहीं है।
ये मुकेश मिश्रा करके है, पंडित मुकेश मिश्रा जी।
अच्छा, जो है लाइन पर है वो तो।
हाँ जूम पे।
हाँ तो ठीक है, वो कर सकते हैं, उनको मालूम है ना क्या करना है।
जय गुरुदेव। मैं
हाँ जय
गिरीश
गुरुदेव।
भैया को मैसेज भेजी थी। यदि मुकेश जी तक मैसेज पहुंचा या नहीं ये मुझे मालूम नहीं है, लेकिन मुकेश जी अभी मैं आपको बताती हूँ। आप अकेले हैं और दूसरे और कोई भी हैं आपके साथ?
और भी पंडित जी हैं।
हाँ ठीक है। पहले जब हम ये कार्यक्रम आरंभ करेंगे तो सहना भवतु शांति पाठ करना।
जी ठीक है।
हाँ, फिर उसके बाद में हम लोग 10 मिनट ध्यान करेंगे। उसके बाद में गीता पारायण आरंभ होएगा। पहले गीता ध्यानम में पहली श्लोक और आखिर श्लोक, पहली श्लोक पार्थाय प्रतिबोधिताम जो है ना।
जी जी
है, पुस्तक है क्या आपके पास और दूसरे पंडितों के साथ?
जी जी बिल्कुल है
सब ठीक है। तो आपको आदत है ना पार्थाय प्रतिबोधिता पारायण करने? हो सकता?
जी बिल्कुल।
हाँ, क्योंकि शुक्रवार के दिन यम ब्रह्मा करे थे आप, लेकिन यम ब्रह्मा से पहले पार्थाय प्रतिबोधिता वो श्लोक पढ़ना, फिर यम ब्रह्मा वरुणेन्द्र रुद्र मरुता वो पढ़ना, फिर उसके बाद में भगवत गीता में पहला अध्याय प्रथम अध्याय पूरा पारायण करना, पहला अध्याय पूरा पारायण करना।
जी जी बिल्कुल दीदी।
ठीक है
जी बिल्कुल बिल्कुल मैम।
हाँ बहुत अच्छा, धन्यवाद। कितने पंडित हैं आपके साथ?
3 पंडित जी हैं।
अच्छा, तो आपको मिलाते हुए 4 हैं या
नहीं 3 ही है मुझे भी मिला के।
हाँ हाँ बहुत अच्छा, 3 बहुत अच्छा है।
जी
ये बात है
जय गुरुदेव।
जय गुरुदेव।
हो गया
जी ठीक है, एक अध्याय करना है ना?
हाँ एक अध्याय, प्रथम अध्याय केवल प्रथम। हाँ बस प्रथम अध्याय के बाद हम समाप्त करेंगे, पारायण समाप्त करेंगे। गीता प्रेस का है आपके पास बुक?
जी गीता प्रेस का ही है।
हाँ बहुत अच्छा है, मेरे पास भी गीता प्रेस का है। So while we are waiting for Brahmachari Girish ji, I would like to tell the participants to buy Maharishi's Gita if you don't have one. Some of you probably already have the book. Some of you may not have the book. It will be good to have the book, but until you all buy the books, we are going to display what we are going to read, and then you can look on the screen what is being read. And then when you buy your book, it will be good to keep your book with you. And Maharishi said in the guidelines that he had given us that when you find a main point or an appealing point or something that you like in the book, when we read it, you can underline it. So you may keep your book and pencil ready. And if anybody wants to know where to buy the book, that would be in the Maharishi bookshop. Sachin, can you put that? I sent you one message, right, with the Maharishi bookshop. Can you display it, please?
Yes, ma'am. Jai Gurudev.
Jai Gurudev. Can you display it, that Maharishi bookshop ka?
नो मैम।
You cannot display it.
यस।
अच्छा,
और मैडम जो भी डिस्प्ले करेंगे वो अपने हाथ से स्क्रीन शेयर कर सकते हैं।
हाँ
जयश्री मैडम को कोस्ट बना दिया है, मीना मैडम भी है।
हाँ,
जयश्री
मीना
मैडम अपना
मैडम के
शेयर करेंगी स्क्रीन।
मुझे स्क्रीन शेयर करना नहीं आता, मेरे पास है लेकिन वो नहीं आता। तो
मीना मैडम के पास है
मैं
क्या?
मैं मीना को भेजूंगी और she will share the screen.
Okay. Can you email हेमा जी, मुझे email भेज देंगे। और मैंने हमारा आज का स्केड्यूल मैंने पोस्ट किया है चैट में। So पंडित मिश्रा जी, can you see the chat?
जी मैम।
और हेमा जी, जय गुरुदेव।
हाँ, I can see it in the chat what you sent them. So I'm looking for the book. Pooja, is Pooja there? Pooja, did you join?
Pooja is not here, so let me find.
Pooja is not here yet. So I'm looking for a telephone number for this Maharishi bookstore, and I can't find it.
Me
So,
too.
Pooja will be joining shortly, I think, and then when she comes, we can ask her if there is a telephone number. I'm not able to find the telephone number for this Maharishi bookshop.
Jai Gurudev Hemaji, I have the telephone number.
Very good.
But I'll find out and then write and send it in the chat box.
Yes, that will be good.
Thank
So,
you.
yeah, if you put it in the chat box, everybody can see. And Sachin, how can Ramraj TV viewers find out about this number?
Everything is live on YouTube, Ramraj TV YouTube channel.
So, is there any way you can display the number for Maharishi book on Ramraj TV screen?
Yeah,
Right.
what we'll need to do is put it in like a Word document, and perhaps I can do that, Sachin ji and Hema ji. When we find it, I'll just paste it onto a Word document and then
okay.
share screen.
Yes, that will be good.
Yeah.
That will be good. So while we are waiting, I would like to say something. Sachin ji is calling me Hema madam. मैडम जो है कॉलोनियल है, वो जो अंग्रेजी लोग थे जब का शब्द है, लेकिन हम कॉलोनियलिज्म से दूर हटना चाहते हैं। अपना संस्कृति है, भारतीय संस्कृति है, वैदिक संस्कृति है, तो हम वो अंग्रेजी बातें भूलेंगे तो अच्छा होएगा। अपने संस्कृति में अपने से बड़े लोगों को मर्यादा गौरव से बोलना है तो जी बोलेंगे, तो मैडम के बदले में जी ठीक लगेगा। और इसी कारण हम अपना कार्यक्रम के अंत में किसी का जन्मदिन है तो मनाएंगे। हमारे साथ जयश्री हैं, बहुत अच्छा गाते हैं, तो किसी का जन्मदिन है तो जयश्री संस्कृत में जन्मदिन गाना गाएंगे। हैप्पी बर्थडे गाने में कोई गलती नहीं है, लेकिन बाहर का कोई संस्कृति सीखते हैं तो अच्छे चीज सीखना और अपना संस्कृति नहीं भूलना। इसीलिए हम किसी का जन्मदिन है तो संस्कृत में जयश्री जन्मदिनमिदं गाएंगे। तो किसी का जन्मदिन है तो आप तैयार रहना, अंत में हम पूछेंगे तब आप हाथ उठाना। और रामराज टीवी के व्यूअर्स के पास भी किसी का बर्थडे है तो वो लोग वहाँ चैट बॉक्स में डालेंगे, तो सब लोगों को हम जय श्री गाएंगे।
Jai Gurudev, I think the time is already, the time is there, it is 7:37. So why not we start, we can just start chanting, and then in the meantime, others will join.
अच्छा, ठीक है. I was waiting for Girish Verma ji, and
Because
he's
if
not
we have to finish in time, we want to
right.
close at 9, then we have to start. Otherwise,
That is true. So I'm thinking, Sharma ji, shall we start with group meditation?
yes, we can start with group meditation. That will be good. Yes.
Okay. So now let us begin group meditation. All of you sit comfortably and close eyes, and those who learn transcendental meditation will do transcendental meditation. And if there is anyone who did not learn to meditate yet, just close the eyes and go inward. मन को अंतर्मुख करना, बस 10 मिनट के बाद हम जय गुरुदेव बोलेंगे, तब 1-2 मिनट के बाद आप सब लोग आंखें खोल सकते हैं. जय गुरुदेव. Let's begin now. Jai Gurudev. Take a minute or so and slowly open the eyes. Jai Gurudev. Slowly open the eyes. Slowly open the eyes. Now, I would like to request our Pandits to please begin first chapter Parayana.
सहनावतु सहनो भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ओम शांति शांति शांति। ओम पार्थाय प्रतिबोधितां भगवता नारायणेन स्वयं व्यासेन ग्रथितां पुराणमुनिना मध्ये महाभारतम् अद्वैतामृतवर्षिणीं भगवती अष्टादशाध्यायिनी वन्दे त्वामससामिमां भगवती गीते भगवद्वेषिणी। ओम श्री परमात्मने नमः। श्रीमद्भगवत गीता अथ प्रथमोऽध्यायः। धृतराष्ट्रोवाच धर्मक्षेत्रे कुरुक्षेत्रे समवेतायुयुत्सवः मामकः पाण्डवाश्चैव किं कुर्वत सञ्जय सञ्जय उवाच दृष्ट्वा तु पाण्डवानीकं व्यूढं दुर्योधनस्तदा आचार्यमुपसंगम्य राजा वचनमब्रवीत् पश्यैतां पाण्डुपुत्राणाम् आचार्यमहतिं च मूं व्यूढां द्रुपदपुत्रेण तव शिष्येण धीमता अत्र शूरा महेश्वासा भीमार्जुन समायुधि युयुधानो विराटश्च द्रुपदश्च महारथा दृष्टकेतुश्चेकितानः काशीराजश्च वीर्यवान् पुरुजित् कुन्तिभोजश्च शैब्यश्च नरपुङ्गवः युधामन्युश्च विक्रान्ता उत्तमौजाश्च वीर्यवान् सौभद्रो द्रौपदेयाश्च सर्व एव महारथाः अस्माकं तु विशिष्टाये तानि भोजध्वजोत्तमाः नायका मम सैन्यस्य संज्ञार्थं तं ब्रवीमि ते भवान् भीष्मश्च कर्णश्च कृपश्च समितिञ्जयः अश्वत्थामा विकर्णश्च सोमदत्तिस्तथैव च अन्ये च बहवः शूरा मदर्थे त्यक्तजीविताः नानाशस्त्रप्रहरणा सर्वे युद्धविशारदाः अपर्याप्तं तदस्माकं बलं भीष्माभिरक्षितम् पर्याप्तं तु तमेतेषां बलं भीमाभिरक्षितम् अयनेषु स सर्वेषु यथा भागमवस्थिताः भीष्ममेवाभिरक्षन्तु भवन्तः सर्व एव हि तस्य सञ्जनयन् हर्षं कुरुवृद्धा पितामहः सिंहनादं विनादोच्यै शङ्खं दधमौ प्रतापवान् तथा शङ्खाश्च भैर्यश्च पणवान् खगोमुखाः सहसैवाभ्ययन्त सशब्दस्तु मुलोऽभवत् तथा श्वेतैर्हरैर्युक्ते महति नन्दने स्थितौ माधवा पाण्डवश्चैव दिव्यौ शङ्खौ गदत्मतुः पाञ्चजन्यः ऋषिकेशो देवदत्तं धनञ्जयः पौण्ड्रं दधमौ महाशङ्खं भीमकर्मा वृकोदरः अनन्तविजयं राजा कुन्तीपुत्रो युधिष्ठिरः नकुलः सहदेवश्च सुघोषमणिपुष्पकौ कायश्च परमेश्वास शिखण्डी च महारथः दष्टधमनो विराटश्च सात्विकश्च पराजितः द्रुपदो द्रौपदेयाश्च सर्वशः पृथिवीपते सौभद्रश्च महाबाहो शङ्खान् दधमौ पृथक् पृथक् सघोषोधार्तराष्ट्राणां हृदयानि व्यदारयत् नवश्च पृथिवीं चैव तुमुलोऽभ्यनादयन् अथ व्यवस्थितान् दृष्ट्वा धार्तराष्ट्रान् कपिध्वजः प्रवृत्ते शस्त्रसम्पाते धनुरुद्यम्य पाण्डवः ऋषिकेशं तदा वाक्य मिदमाह महीपते अर्जुनोवाच सेनयोरुमयोर्मध्ये रथं स्थापयमेच्युता यावदेतान् निरीक्षेऽहं योद्धकामानवस्थितान् कैर्मया सह योद्धव्यमस्मिन् रणसमुद्यमे योत्सनामान् निरीक्षेऽहं यायते तत्र समागताः धार्तराष्ट्राश्च दुर्बुद्धे युद्धे प्रियचिकीर्षवः संजय उवाच एवमुक्तो ऋषिकेशो गुणाकेशेन भारत सेनयोरुभयोर्मध्ये स्थापयित्वा रथोत्तमान् भीष्मद्रोणप्रमुखतः सर्वेषां च महीक्षितान् उवाच पार्थ पश्यैतान् समवेतान् कुरुनिति तत्र पश्यस्थितान् पार्थ पितॄन् पितामहान् आचार्यमतुलान् भ्रातॄन् पुत्रान् पौत्रान् सखिस्तथा श्वशुरान् सुहृदश्चैव सेनयोरुभयोरपि तान् समीक्ष्य कौन्तेय सर्वान् बन्धून् अवस्थितान् कृपया परयाविष्टो विषेदन्यपदब्रवीत् अर्जुन उवाच दर्शवेमं कृष्ण युयुत्सुं समुपस्थितम् सेदन्ति मम गात्राणि मुखं च परिशुष्यति वेपशरीरे मे रोमहर्षश्च जायते दान्येवं संसते हस्त्वा यक्चैलं हृदयते न च शक्नोम्यवस्थातुं रातीव च मे मनः निमित्तानि च पश्यामि विपरीतानि केशव न च श्रेयो पश्यामि हत्वा स्वजनमाहवे नाकाङ्क्षे विजयं कृष्ण न च राज्यं सुखानि च किं नु राज्येन गोविन्द किं भोगैर्जीवितेन वा येषामर्थे काङ्क्षितं नो राज्यं भोगा सुखानि च तमेव स्थिता युद्धे प्राणास्त्यक्त्वा धनानि च आचार्याः पितरः पुत्राः तथैव च पितामहाः मातुलाः सुसुराः पौत्राः श्यालाः सम्बन्धिनस्तदा एतान् हन्तुमिच्छामि घ्नतोऽपि मधुसूदन अपत्रैलोक्यराजस्य हेतो किं नु मही कृते निहत्यधार्तराष्ट्रान्न का प्रीतिः स्यात् जनार्दन पापमेवाश्रये तस्मान् हत्वैदानानतायिना तस्मान्नार्हां वयं हन्तुं धार्तराष्ट्रा स्वबान्धवान् स्वजनं हि कथं हत्वा सुखिनः स्याम माधव यद्यपेतन पश्यन्ति लोभोपहत चेतसा कुलक्षयकृतं दोषं मित्रद्रोहे च पातकम् कथं न गेयमसमाभिः पापदस्समानिवर्तितुम् कुलक्षयकृतं दोषं प्रपश्यद्भिर्जनार्दन कुलक्षये प्रणश्यन्ति कुलधर्माः सनातनाः धर्मे नष्टे कुलं कृष्ण मधर्मोऽभिभवत्युत अधर्माभिभवात् कृष्ण यदुष्यन्ति कुलस्त्रियः स्त्रेषु पुष्टासु भाष्रेण जायते वर्णशङ्करा शङ्करो नरकैयैव कुलज्ञानां कुलस्य च पतन्ति पितरो हेषां लुप्तपिण्डोदकक्रिया दोषे रेतै कुलज्ञानां वर्णसङ्करकारकैः उत्साद्यन्ते जातिधर्मा कुलधर्मस्य शाश्वताः उत्सान् कुलधर्माणां मनुष्याणां जनार्दन नरके नियतं वासो भवति शुश्रुवा अहो बत महत् पापं कर्तुं व्यवसिता वयं यद्राजसुखलोभेन हन्तुं स्वजनमुद्यताः यद्मामतिकारस्तं मशस्त्रं शस्त्रपाणयः धार्तराष्ट्रारणे हन्युस्तन्मे क्षेमकरं भवेत् सञ्जय उवाच एवमुक्त्वार्जुनः सङ्ख्ये रथोपश्च उपाविशत् विसृज्य ससरं चापं शोकसंविघ्नमानसः ॐ तत्सदिति श्रीमद्भगवद्गीता उपनिषत्सु ब्रह्मविद्यायां योगशास्त्रे श्रीकृष्णार्जुनसंवादे अर्जुनविषादयोगो नाम प्रथमोऽध्यायः। श्रीकृष्णार्पणमस्तु।
Jai Gurudev. Dhanyavad Pandito for first chapter Parayana. Now we will have reading of preface from Maharishi's commentary on Bhagavad Gita. We have two readers, Anita ji and Meena. I will introduce them. Anita ji had been working as a principal of Maharishi Vidya Mandir, Kangra, Dharmashala for 22 years. She is a transcendental meditation teacher and totally dedicated to Maharishi's knowledge. At the present, she is working under spiritual guidance of Brahmachari Girish Varmaji as coordinator of Maharishi consciousness-based education. She is also secretary, Maharishi World Peace Movement. She built and dedicated a TM hall to Maharishiji for carrying forward Maharishi's knowledge. She has regular meetings there and group meditations. This shows her love and devotion to Maharishiji and her conviction and strong belief in Maharishi's teachings and noble goal of world peace. I have known her for the last 2 years. She participated actively in our previous Gita Satsang, and I'm amazed at her ability to grasp Maharishi's knowledge and recapping for students in very simple words. We are very happy to have her on our team. Anita ji, please go ahead. Meena, please display, and Anita ji will read first. And then after she reads 2 pages, we will pause and Sharma ji will make, comments. Please go ahead.
Jai Gurudev to everyone. Thank you very much, Hemaji. I wonder if I deserve all that you said, but thanks a lot. And to begin the preface, I begin now. The Vedas are the lighthouse of eternal wisdom, leading man to salvation and inspiring him to supreme accomplishment. The omnipresence of eternal being, unmanifested and absolute, its status as that even in the manifested diversity of creation and the possibility of the realization of being by any man in terms of himself. There are great truths of the perennial philosophy of the Vedas. The Vedas reveal the unchanging unity of life, which underlies the evident multiplicity of creation, where reality is both manifest and unmanifest. And that alone is, I am that, thou art that, and that all is that, is the truth. And this is the kernel of the Vedic teaching, which the rishis extol as teaching worthy of hearing, contemplating, and realizing. The truth of Vedic wisdom is by its very nature independent of time and can therefore never be lost. When, however, man's vision becomes one-sided and he is caught by the binding influence of the phenomenal world to the exclusion of the absolute phase of reality, when he is thus confined within the ever-changing phases of the existence, his life loses stability and he begins to suffer. When suffering grows, the invincible force of nature moves to set man's vision right and establish a way of life which will again fulfill the high purpose of his existence. The long history of the world records many such periods in which the ideal pattern of life is first forgotten and then restored to man. Vedvyasa, the sage of enlightened vision and the greatest among the historians of antiquity, records the growth of unrighteousness in the families of those who ruled the people about 5,000 years ago. It was then that Shri Krishna Bhagavan came to remind man of the true values of life and living. He restored that direct contact with the transcendent being. which alone can give the fullness to every aspect of life. He brought to light absolute being as the basic reality of life and established it as the foundation of all thinking, which in turn is the basis of all doing. This philosophy of being, thinking, and doing is the true philosophy of the integrated life. It not only helps the doer to gain success in his undertaking, but at the same time sets him free from the bondage of action, bringing fulfillment at every level. Such is the teaching of eternal truth given by Shri Krishna Bhagavan to Arjuna in Bhagavad Gita. Gradually, this teaching came to be forgotten, so that 2000 years later, even the principle of being as the absolute reality, the source and the basis of all creation, was overshadowed by misguided beliefs which glorified only the relative aspects of life. The long lapse of time, says Shri Krishna Bhagavan, is the reason for such a loss of wisdom. When the philosophy of the integrated life restored by Shri Krishna Bhagavan was lost from view, the idea grew that everything which life can offer is present on the obvious levels of existence, and that it would therefore be useless to aspire to anything that might lie deeper than external appearances. Society became dominated by this superficial outlook. Insight into reality was lost, the right sense of values forgotten, and the stability of life destroyed. Tension, confusion, superstition, unhappiness, and fear prevailed.
Jai
Lord,
Gurudev.
Jai
Gurudev.
Gurudev.
Anita ji, we will pause here. And now I would like to request Dr. Bhuvanesh Sharma ji to comment on what Anita just read. And then after this, we learn about Buddha. So this is a good place to pause.
Ji. Thank you, Jai Gurudev.
Jai Gurudev. So we welcome all the people who are connected with our program, Gita Satsang. And I thank Anita ji for reading so nicely the preface. And actually, it is really a joy to talk about the importance of the Vedas. And in the Maharishi's commentary, first of all, Maharishi has given the, we can say, importance or value of the Vedas, because Bhagavad Gita is the part of the Vedas. So first, he has given the importance of the Veda and Vedic knowledge. And what he says is that the Vedic knowledge is for accomplishing not only the materialistic things what one aspires for, but also getting, we can say, enlightenment. So it is good for bhukti and mukti. And he also mentions that there is, like, whatever we see outside, that is the manifested creation. But the basis of all this manifestation is the unmanifest. Just like the foundation of a building is hidden, but that is the foundation of the whole building. Building is only, we can say, standing on that foundation. So that unmanifest reality is the real reality, and the Vedas bring that knowledge by which every individual can become that. One can become, we can say, the basis of all creation. One can have that consciousness, which is the basis of all creation. That is why Maharishi said that one can have I am that, like Aham Brahmasmi, Tvam Brahmasmi, Am Sarvam Khaladam Brahma. So everyone is Brahma. So that consciousness the individual can have, that is the beauty of the Vedic knowledge. Then he mentions that it is an eternal knowledge. So actually it cannot be lost because it is eternal. But what happens is that the individual always looking outward and getting, we can say, accumulating stress and strain because of the bondage, then the reality of the existence is lost from the consciousness of the individual, and then the suffering starts. So similarly, when the suffering starts for individuals, then the whole collective consciousness also is in such a manner that they lose contact with the reality, and then the whole society suffers. And we are very fortunate in this land of the Vedas that every time Lord Bhagwan Krishna says that yada yada hi dharmasya glanir bhavati bharata, means whenever there is, we can say, violation of the laws of nature, whenever the individual's consciousness is losing that reality or unboundedness, then the suffering starts. And to remove that suffering and bring that knowledge, every time either the Bhagwan incarnates himself or sends some sages like Maharishi. So like that, in every time the knowledge is lost, there is, we can say, the knowledge is brought back, so that the man is always on the track, always thinking and doing action in accordance with the laws of nature. What happens is, when Maharishi has mentioned this transcendental meditation, because that is the right way, I will actually suggest that all those who are not yet practicing transcendental meditation, because here in the preface itself, Maharishi has mentioned transcendental meditation. So, because that is the direct contact with the being, that is the message of Bhagwan Shri Krishna, that if you are, we can say, enlivening your consciousness in that holistic value, pure consciousness, then all your thinking will be automatically, spontaneously in accordance with the laws of nature. Actually, the same message is everywhere in all the Vedic texts. They say that then the thinking is always right. In Ramcharitmanas, I don't want to take much time, but it is my joy to say that the same message is everywhere. Lord Ram, Bhagwan Ram says to Lakshman that Raghuvan Shinkar says Subhahu, Man Kupanth Pagdharane Kau, means our mind is always in the right direction. It never goes against the laws of the nature. And that also is spontaneously. Not one has to think, but automatically one's action, thinking and action is always right. So, and another thing, last point he was mentioning was that there is no one, we can say, be blamed. No one can be blamed for loss of this knowledge. Just like the sun rises every day, but sometimes the clouds are there. So we can say that sun is hiding. So the knowledge is eternal, but it hides from the consciousness of the individual because of, we can say, bondage and stresses and strain in the nervous system. So no one is to be blamed. It is the time only. He will be explaining more in detail how this, we can say, lapse of time causes this loss of knowledge, but then, and how it comes back again and again, and bringing the whole individual and society on the right track. And actually, all these things can also be explained scientifically, because in those days when Maharishi wrote this commentary in 1965, at that time, the knowledge of unified field was not there. But now, fortunately, we can say we have this knowledge and it can be explained further. I don't want to take much time. One more point I would like to mention, and that is that how many of you would be happy with the English version, because then otherwise, in case some people are interested in Hindi version also, it depends on the audience, then we can also talk in Hindi as if it is desired so. So thank you, and then we can read the later part of this preface, and then we will talk about it later again. Thank you. Jai Gurudev, Jai Maharishi.
Jai Gurudev. Thank you, Sharmaji. Now we'll continue with reading. Anitaji, please go ahead. Now the next paragraph begins with Bhagwan Buddha.
Right. Jai Gurudev. Bhagwan Buddha came to remedy this situation. Finding the field of action distorted, he came with a message of right action. Speaking from his level of consciousness, established in being in eternal freedom, nirvana, Bhagwan Buddha taught the philosophy of action and freedom. He advocated meditation in order to purify the field of thought through direct contact with being and bring about the state of right action in society. Bhagwan Buddha's message was complete because he incorporated the fields of being, thinking, and doing in his theme of revival. But because of his followers failed to correlate these different fields of life in a systematic manner through the practice of transcendental meditation, realization of the being as the basis of a good life became obscured. The whole structure of Bhagwan Buddha's teaching not only became distorted, but was also turned upside down. The effect was mistaken for the cause. Right action came to be regarded as a means to gain nirvana, whereas right action is in fact the result of this state of consciousness in freedom. It has been the misfortune of every great teacher that while he speaks from his level of consciousness, his followers can only receive his message from their level, and the gulf between the teaching and understanding grows wider with time. The teaching of right action without due emphasis on the primary necessity of realization of being is like building a wall without foundation. It sways with the wind and collapses before long. Within 300 or 400 years of all real connection between the essential teachings of Bhagwan Buddha and the daily life of his followers had disappeared. Insight into the principle of the integrated life was lost. Having forgotten the prime importance of realizing being, society became immersed once more in the superficialities of life. I hand over to Meenaji for further reading. Thank you, Jai Gurudev.
Sharmaji, would you like to make a brief comment on this, and then we will move on to Shankara?
Yes, okay. So what after Bhagwan Shri Krishna, because the knowledge, because of, we can say, because of the lapse of time, the knowledge given by Bhagwan Shri Krishna was lost. But then came Bhagwan Buddha, and Bhagwan Buddha also gave the importance to the direct experiencing of pure being or the transcendental consciousness. But somehow, and he also mentioned that if you are experiencing the pure consciousness, you are experiencing nirvana, then what will happen? Your action will be automatically right. But somehow, unfortunately, gradually people forgot that hidden part, and they thought that if the action is right, then we will have the experience of nirvana. And that is why Maharishi says everything was like upside down. And same reason, because of the lapse of time, what happens is when a person is giving some knowledge, when the guru is giving the knowledge, the disciple is not having that level of consciousness. So there is a gap between the consciousness of the teacher and the consciousness of the taught. And that gap actually multiplies. And because of that, with the long lapse of time, every time the gap is increasing and the knowledge is lost. So the action, the main, we can say, the technique of nirvana, bringing righteousness in the action, was upside down, and people thought that if we will speak truth, if we will do non-violence, if we will do, we can say, speak satya, truth, then what will happen? That we will be experiencing nirvana. So again, the knowledge was lost, and again then and another, we can say, we will be coming to the next great sage, Shankara, who everyone knows, and then we will talk about it, how the knowledge was brought to life again. Thank you. Jai Gurudev, Jai Maharishi.
Jai Gurudev. Thank you, Sharmaji. Meena, you begin, please. Now we are going to read about Shankaracharya and how he came to our rescue.
Jai Gurudev. Nature will not allow humanity to be deprived of the vision of reality for very long. A wave of revival brought Shankaracharya ji to re-establish the basis of life and renew human understanding. Adi Shankaracharya ji restored the wisdom of the absolute and established it in the daily life of the people, strengthening the fields of thought and action by the power of being. He brought the message of fulfillment through direct realization of transcendental being in the state of self-consciousness, which is the basis of all good in life. Adi Shankaracharya ji's emphasis on self-realization stems from the eternal philosophy of the integrated life expressed by Bhagwan Sri Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita, when he asks Arjuna first to be without the three gunas and then to perform actions while thus established in being. That all men should at all times live the bliss consciousness of the absolute being, and that they should live the state of fulfillment in God consciousness, Bhagwan consciousness, throughout all thought, speech, and action. This is the essence of Adi Shankaracharya ji's message, as it is the essence of Bhagwan Shri Krishna's and of the entire Vedic philosophy. The greatest blessing that Adi Shankaracharya ji's teaching has offered to the world is the principle of fullness of intellectual and emotional development in the state of enlightenment, based on transcendental pure consciousness, in which the heart is so pure as to be able to flow and overflow with waves of universal love and devotion to God, while the mind is so refined as to enjoy awareness of the divine nature as separate from the world of action. The spontaneous expressions of Adi Shankaracharya ji's mind and heart in this state of freedom and fulfillment have been a source of inspiration, both to those who live by the heart and those who live by the mind. His consciousness exemplified the highest state of human development. His heart expressed supreme transcendental devotion to God, para bhakti, while his mind expressed awareness of the self as separate from the field of action, gyan. This it was that led Adi Shankaracharya ji's speech to flow into ecstasies of devotion and at the same time into clear expressions of knowledge, the dry and hard-headed truths concerning divine nature as detached from the world. These are the two aspects of the living reality of a life in complete fulfillment. Adi Shankaracharya ji not only revived the wisdom of integrated life and made it popular in his day, but also established 4 principal seats of learning in 4 corners of India. To keep his teaching pure and to ensure that it would be propagated in its entirety, generation after generation. For many centuries, his teaching remained alive in his followers, who lived the ideal state of knowledge with devotion, jnana and bhakti. But in spite of all his foresight and endeavors, Adi Shankaracharya ji's message inevitably suffered with time, the same misfortunes as those of the other great teachers. If the occupants of a house forget the foundations, it is because the foundations lie underground, hidden from view. It is no surprise that being was lost to view, for it lies in the transcendental field of life. The state of reality, as described by the enlightened, cannot become a path for the seeker any more than the description of a destination can replace the road that leads to it. When the truth that being forms the basis of the state of enlightenment became obscured, Adi Shankaracharyaji's statements about the nature of the goal were mistaken for the path to realization. This misunderstanding was increased by the very beauty of Adi Shankaracharyaji's eloquence. His expressions of deep devotion made in the state of complete surrender and oneness with God, and his intellectual clarifications made in the state of awareness of the divine nature are both so full and complete in themselves that, seen from the ordinary level of consciousness, they appeared to present two independent paths to enlightenment, the path of knowledge and the path of devotion. This is the tragedy of knowledge, the tragic fate that knowledge must meet at the hands of ignorance. It is inevitable because the teaching comes from one level of consciousness and is received at quite a different level. The knowledge of unity must in time shatter on the hard rocks of ignorance. History has proved this again and again. Sri Adi Shankaracharyaji's teaching could not prove an exception to the rule. The idea of two paths became more predominant owing to the carelessness of the custodians of Adi Shankaracharyaji's teaching. Since they followed the recluse way of life, they were naturally concerned with thoughts of the separateness of the divine from the world. And with the continuance of this situation, generation after generation, the aspect of knowledge began to dominate Adi Shankaracharyaji's tradition, while the aspect of devotion gradually lost its importance. The teaching became one-sided and, deprived of its wholeness, eventually lost its universal appeal. It came to be regarded as Mayavada, a philosophy of illusion, holding the world to be only illusory and emphasizing the detached way of life. As the principle of being began more and more to disappear from view, the paths of devotion and knowledge became more and more separate. And finally, the link between them was lost. The principle of full development of heart and mind through one process, transcendental meditation, was lost. The integral nature of realization was lost. The true wisdom of life's fulfillment, which lies in the simultaneous development of heart and mind, was lost. The idea that devotion and knowledge are necessarily separate was the greatest blow to Sri Adi Shankaracharyaji's teaching. In
Jai
the
Gurudev.
absence, Jai
Jai
Gurudev.
Gurudev. Meena, thank you for reading. We will pause here. And Dr. Sharma ji, please comment. And there is one question in the chat box from Ranjit Kumar. He's asking what nirvana is and how to achieve it. Ranjit Kumar, nirvana is pure consciousness, and how we achieve it is by transcendental meditation. We will be covering more about this later, but we will continue reading now. I mean, Sharmaji will make comments now.
Jai Gurudev. So thank you, Minaji. It was very good reading. And actually, as we have mentioned earlier, that first Bhagwan Shri Krishna gave the knowledge of integration of life. Actually, I am emphasizing on the word integration of life because that is unifying every aspect, the unmanifest and manifest, the mind and the heart. So all aspects of life are integrated in the self of the individual. So that was the knowledge of Bhagwan Shri Krishna. And then Lord Bhagwan Buddha also gave the same knowledge that first one has to realize or have nirvana. Nirvana is like Maharishi was always mentioning, nivartadham, means come back to the self. Coming back to the self and staying, we can say, experiencing the transcendental value, transcendental consciousness that unifies all aspects of life. So that is nirvana. And then this knowledge somehow also was lost because people were confused. It was upside down. People were thinking that right action will bring us the experience of nirvana. Why it should have been the other way. Then Bhagwan Adi Shankaracharya came. Actually, it is also very interesting to mention that we have Bhagwan Narayan, a symbol, we can say Lord Bhagwan Krishna was Bhagwan Narayan himself, and then Adi Shankara is Bhagwan Shiva. So Adi Shankara actually brought again the same integration of life, and he was, we can say, developing both the heart and the mind simultaneously because of the experience of transcendental consciousness. We will be coming to it, what transcendental consciousness is, how there are different gunas, and how we become Nishtragunni, how we go beyond all the three gunas and we experience transcendental consciousness. So Bhagwan Shankaracharya gave this knowledge, how to transcend, and then everything will be spontaneously right. The heart will also be having bubbling bliss, we can say, will have full devotion, and the mind will also be fully developed. But somehow, again, with the same process as Maharishi has mentioned, that sometimes people are enjoying living in the house, but they may forget the foundation. And if the foundation is forgotten, then the whole building can be collapsed. So similarly, the knowledge was, same fate was of the knowledge. And then people were thinking that there are two separate paths, the path of jnana and the path of bhakti. So this tradition of Shankaracharya, because Adi Shankaracharya established 4 seats of knowledge. So that seat of knowledge was more concerned with jnana. But on the other side, people were thinking that we will achieve the same thing with bhakti. So that integration actually was lost. And then we'll actually go further. I just was mentioning few points, and then we will again read, and then we will, and any question if comes, we will be taking the questions also later. So I think that will suffice for now, and we can read further.
Okay. Thank you, Sharmaji.
Hemlata ji, in case I am not having some point, missing some point, then you may please add anytime. You are welcome.
Okay, you're doing very good explaining the summary of what we are reading. So that's very good. If you want, if I want to add anything, I will do it.
Yes, you are
now, Meena, is Anita ji reading now, or how did you divide reading?
Meena ji to continue for a little more time.
Okay, okay. Meena, go ahead. Now, Sri Ramanuja is coming in picture.
Jai Gurudev. So we are still in the preface section of Maharishi's commentary on Srimad Bhagavad Gita. In the absence of the moon, the stars take over and provide as much light as they can. When Adi Shankaracharyaji's high ideal of transcendental devotion disappeared from sight, Ramanuja, Sri Madhavji, and other teachers upheld the path of devotion, even though without its proper basis in being. People followed them, and thus there arose many devotional sects on all on the level of emotion, and everyone founded on the comfortable basis of hope that someday our prayer will be heard. Someday he will come to us and call us to him. Indeed, a comfort to the heart. But alas, such devotion is on the imaginary plane of feeling. It is far, far away from the reality of actual contact between the devotee and his God. Awareness in the state of being alone makes the whole field of devotion real. All these sects hold that transcendental devotion is the last stage of a devotee's achievement. But Adi Shankaracharyaji's principle of devotion is founded on transcendental consciousness from the very beginning. The first step of Adi Shankaracharyaji is the last step for these devotional sects, a step which, according to their understanding, is far above the reach of ordinary man. The idea that devotion must start from transcendental consciousness, having been lost by the guardians of Adi Shankaracharyaji's wisdom, entrance into the field of devotion was closed. Seekers of God remained seeking in thin air, and lovers of God remained weeping for him without finding him. As devotion remained merely on the level of thinking and of assuming an attitude of feeling, mood making, so knowledge met with the same fate once the direct way to the realization of transcendental consciousness had been lost. Understanding of the unity of life cannot be significant until one has thoroughly understood by direct experience that one's inner divine nature is separate from the world of action. If a man has not gained consciousness in being through the practice of transcendental meditation, he continues to live in ignorance and bondage because he has not yet opened himself to the experience of the separateness of the divine from the world. The thought of unity has no practical use for such a man. He has nothing to unite. On the fertile field of transcendental consciousness, both knowledge and devotion find their fulfillment. But this principle, once forgotten, and the technique of developing transcendental consciousness lost, many, many generations have died without seeing the light of God and without gaining fulfillment. That has been the situation for more than 1,000 years. Misunderstanding itself has taken the shape of a tradition, unfortunately known as Shankaracharyaji's tradition. This great loss to human life can hardly be compensated, but that has been the course of history. Time cannot be recaptured. It is no use repenting the past.
Jai Gurudev. Meena, we will pause now. Sharma ji, please. go ahead, make comments.
Okay, so 1 minute. So it again, the same point was continuing actually. And the point was that the integration of life was lost because of not experiencing the transcendental consciousness. And so there were as if two paths. And as gradually with the lapse of time, the knowledge was being lost, there was one path of knowledge or gyan, and the other path was of bhakti. And many great saints also came up expanding, we can say, that state of devotion. And because they were experiencing actually that devotion because of their elevated level of consciousness. But somehow people thought that they will be achieving transcendence and the divine union with the bhakti only. And that is how the tradition, we can say, there was a tradition of bhakti and there was a tradition of gyan, and that was the biggest damage, we can say, to the knowledge brought by Adi Shankara, because Adi Shankara established that if you experience the transcendental consciousness, then you experience that divine within self, and then you see that the whole manifested creation is expression of your own self. So the heart is also fully developed and the mind is also fully developed. But then again, no one can be blamed, and the knowledge, we can say, was lost. I think there was, basically this was the idea, but in case some more question will come, we will discuss. People were there. One more point actually. Maharishi said that some people were thinking that through bhakti they will achieve God, or the God will come and will fulfill their desires, or will see that they are, we can say, enjoying everything in life. But they were, we can say, losing life without having that experience, because there was no experience of transcendental consciousness. So they left their life without having that experience. And that continues for thousands of years. This condition was continuing. And again, people were thinking that there is one tradition of, if we have to leave the whole worldly things, we go to the Gyan. And if we have to do bhakti, then we just do bhakti. So the two paths were still continuing, and people were not having that real joy of the integrated way of life given by the Vedas. Yes.
Jai Gurudev, do I
Jai Gurudev,
continue?
Uh, one minute, Anitaji. I would just like to make one point. Sharmaji pointed out a very beautiful point, that unless we have the experience of pure consciousness, Atma, life is not really lived in fullness. And because of the lack of experience of the inner silence of Atma, pure consciousness, the bhakti was on the surface level of life. Like, for example, somebody may say, if I pass in the exam, I will break a coconut, or if my daughter gets married, I will go to Tirupati, something like that. These are surface values. They have some bhakti, we are not denying that, but it is on a surface level, on a limited level. But once you transcend and experience transcendental consciousness, nirvana, pure consciousness, then we grow in devotion. And then one finds that we are totally immersed in huge waves of love and happiness and bliss and devotion to God, that we reach the state of parabhakti. It's not on surface level anymore. And then we experience that unity consciousness, union with our deity. So I thought that I would make that point. Anitaji, you can continue now.
In our review of the rise and fall of truth, we must not lose sight of the great impact that Shankaracharya ji produced on Indian life. It was the perfection of his presentation that caused Shankaraji's teaching to be accepted as the core of Vedic wisdom and placed it at the center of Indian culture. It became so inseparable from the Indian way of life that when in course of time this teaching was lost in its universal character and came to be interpreted as for the recluse order alone. The whole basis of Indian culture also began to be considered in terms of the recluse way of life, founded on renunciation and detachment. When this detached view of life became accepted as the basis of Vedic wisdom, the wholeness of life and fulfillment was lost. This era of understanding has dominated Indian culture for centuries and has turned the principle of life upside down. Life on the basis of detachment. This is a complete distortion of Indian philosophy. It has not only destroyed the path of realization, but has led the seekers of truth continuously astray. Indeed, it has left them without the possibility of ever finding the goal. Not only was the path to enlightenment lost, but the entire art of living disappeared in the clouds of ignorance which obscured every phase of life. Even religion became blind to itself. Instead of directly helping people to gain God consciousness and act rightly on the basis, religious preachers began to teach that right action is in itself a way to purification and thereby to God consciousness. Without being, confusion of cause and effect invaded every field of understanding. It captured even the most practical field of the philosophy of yoga, Karam Yoga, that is, attainment of union by the way of action, began to be understood as based on karma, action, whereas its basis is yoga, union, transcendental consciousness. The founder of the yoga philosophy, Patanjali, was himself misinterpreted and the order of the stages on his eightfold path reversed. The practice of yoga was understood to start with yam, niyam, and so on, the secular virtues, whereas in reality it should begin with samadhi. Samadhi cannot be gained by the practice of yam, niyam, and so on. Proficiency in the virtues can only be gained by repeated experiences of samadhi. It was because the effect was mistaken for the cause that this great philosophy of life became distorted and the path to samadhi was blocked. With the loss of insight into yoga, the other 5 classical systems of Indian philosophy lost their power. They remained on the theoretical level of knowledge, for it is through yoga alone that knowledge steps into practical life. Thus, we find that all fields of religion and philosophy have been misunderstood and wrongly interpreted for many centuries past. This has blocked the path to the fullest development of heart and mind, so precisely revived by Shankaracharya ji. Interpretation of the Bhagavad Gita and other Indian scriptures are now so full of the idea of renunciation that they are regarded with distrust by practical men in every part of the world. Many Western universities hesitate to teach Indian philosophy for this reason. The responsibility for this loss of truth to the whole world lies with the interpreters of Shankaracharya ji's teaching. Missing the essence of his wisdom, they have been unable to save the world from falling ever deeper into ignorance and suffering. This age has forever been fortunate. It has witnessed the living example of a man inspired by Vedic wisdom in its wholeness, and thus able to revive the philosophy of the integrated life in all its truth and fullness. His divinity, Swami Brahmanand Saraswati, the inspiration and guiding light of this commentary on the Bhagavad Gita, adorned the seat of the Shankaracharya of the north, and glowing in divine radiance, embodied in himself the head and the heart of Shankaracharya ji. He expounded the truth in its all-embracing nature. His quiet words, coming from the unbounded love of his heart, pierced the hearts of all who heard him and brought enlightenment to their minds. His message was the message of fullness of heart and mind. He moved as the living embodiment of truth and was addressed as Vedanta incarnate by the great Indian philosopher, the President of India, Dr. Radhakrishnan. It was the concern of Gurudev, his divinity, Swami Brahmanand Saraswati, to enlighten all men everywhere that resulted in the foundation of the worldwide spiritual regeneration movement in 1958, 5 years after his departure from us. India is a country where truth matters most, and the Indians are a people to whom God matters most. Indian soil has witnessed many times the revival of life's true philosophy. The people of India have never hesitated to return once more to the right path whenever it was convincingly pointed out to them that their way of life had taken a wrong course. This receptiveness to truth of the Indian people has always been a source of inspiration and a signal of hope to all movements aiming at the revival of true life and living. May the present commentary on the Bhagavad Gita produce the desired effect in response to the historical necessity of today. The purpose of this commentary is to restore the fundamental truths of the Bhagavad Gita and thus restore the significance of its teaching. If this teaching is followed, effectiveness in life will be achieved. Men will be fulfilled on all levels, and the historical need of the age will be fulfilled also. Jai Gurudev, thank you.
Sharma ji, please go ahead.
Yes. So now, as we were mentioning about Shankara's, we can say, way of integration of life through the experience of transcendental being, transcendental consciousness. And then we also mentioned that somehow it was misunderstood, and there were two phases, as if the Gyan path and the Bhakti path. Then this continued for quite long, and even people were thinking that the the Vedic knowledge is not very practical, even though you can see that Lord Bhagwan Krishna gave this knowledge on the battlefield, so that how Arjun can take action to win over the, we can say, the enemy, but somehow to bring the righteousness, to win the dharma. So this is the knowledge. Vedic philosophy is the philosophy of right action. But somehow, because the knowledge was lost, so people were thinking that we have to have recluse life, means we have to have renunciation of life. तो एक संन्यास मार्ग हो गया और एक भक्ति मार्ग हो गया. और संन्यास, because of this recluse way of life, the practicality of Vedic knowledge was lost. And Maharishi mentions that actually all the practical people who think that we should give success in the worldly things as well, they thought that this knowledge is imperfect. And if we have to have experience of that transcendental being, we will have to renunciate the whole world. And that no one wants to do. So that way, there was a big, we can say, blow to the Vedic knowledge. But somehow we are very fortunate in this present age when we have His Divinity Swami Brahmanand Saraswati Ji, who actually revived the knowledge. And there is a whole story how Gurudev was, we can say, became Shankaracharya and was bringing this knowledge. But here we can just mention the main point. And the main point is that His Divinity Swami Brahmanand Saraswati Ji was having that integrated way of life, the full we can say experience of transcendental consciousness, and thereby developing the heart and developing the mind as well. So bringing knowledge, we can say, really integrating the life. And for him, Dr. Radhakrishnan, the President of India, he was a great philosopher, and he said that His Divinity Swami Brahmanand Saraswati Ji is Vedant incarnate. One more point came actually, and that was the misunderstanding of the whole philosophy of yoga, because yoga is the basis of all Indian philosophy. And there are 6 systems of Indian philosophy, Nyaya, Vaisheshik, Sankhya, Yoga, and Karma Mimamsa. And we can say that the basis of all this knowledge is yoga. And in yoga also we have Patanjali Yoga, which is still, I can say, even in present times, those who are not practicing transcendental meditation, they are confused and they think that for having samadhi, one has to go to yam, niyam, asana. Actually, there was a great Mahatma. He asked Maharishi Ji, how you can go to the dhyan? Because dhyan comes on the 7th level. That Maharishi told that if we catch hold of one leg of the table, the whole table comes. So similarly, the basis of that is why in Patanjali Yoga Darshan also, the first is Samadhi path, experience of Samadhi, and then regular experience of Samadhi, the transcendental consciousness, will bring all the good qualities, whatever one aspires for. So that we can say His Divinity Swami Brahmanand Saraswati Ji, he did justice with the Vedic knowledge, and his we can say aspiration was to enlighten all the individuals on earth so that they can really enjoy life in this world, as well as they can have, we can say, the self-realization also. So this is just because the time is also coming up. And so I thank all of those who are connected, and we can take questions in case there are any, and then Himlata ji will continue to tell the program. So thank you all. Jai Gurudev, Jai Maharishi.
Jai Gurudev. Thank you, Sharma ji, for your beautiful comments. There is one question in the chat box. Yes. Varsha Jha asked a question. She said, how do we manage? So I didn't understand the question.
Actually, there are 2 things to manage. One is to manage to learn transcendental meditation. And the other thing is to have the experience of transcendental consciousness, so that everything will be managed, incorporating that consciousness through which the whole creation is managed.
Very good. Excellent answer. So the basic thing we need to do is get in touch with our own inner abilities, inner Atma, because Atma has Sat, Chit, Ananda. And when we reach that level of Sat, Chit, Ananda, and when we come out of meditation, we are coming out with more energy, more intelligence, and more happiness. And that takes care of everything all aspects of life. That is why Sharmaji said, learn to meditate and experience that inner self, Atma, inside of us. And Maharishi also said many times, water the root to enjoy the fruit. By just watering the root, we are enlivening all aspects of the tree, the branches, leaves, flowers, fruit, everything. So we don't have to take care of each thing separately. So that is the answer. Varsha, I hope I answered your question. We will stop now. It is time to stop. Thank you all for joining. I would like to know if anybody is having a birthday today or in the last 1 week. Please let me know, and Jayashree will sing happy birthday song in Samskrita. Ravendra, is there anything in the Ramraj TV chat box? Okay, Ravendra said no. Okay, so we will end now. Sachin, are the Pandits still there? If they're still there, I would like them to do Shanti Path. And if not, the Jayashree will do Shanti Path. Are they still here?
Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am.
Please. Pandit ji, कृपया शांति पाठ करना.
जी जी. हरि ओम माधव शांतिरंतरिक्षगं शांति पृथ्वी शांतिरापः शांतिर्मुखदयः शांतिः मानसपातयः शांतिर्विश्वे देवाः शांतिर्ब्रह्मा शांतिः सर्वगं शांतिरेव शांतिः श्यामा शांतिरेधि जतो यतः समीहसे ततो नो अभयं कुरु सन्नः कुरु प्रजाभ्यो भयं नः पाशुभ्यः. ओम शांति शांति शांति. जय महर्षि.
Jai Gurudev. Thank you, Panditji. We will close now. Thank you all for joining. We will meet again next Sunday, same time.
Thank you, ma'am. Jai Gurudev.
Jai Gurudev. So all of you, please try to buy the book. We will display one more time so that you will get your books in the mail or from the shop. And we will meet again next Sunday, 7:30 p.m. Bharat time. And I would like to thank Sharma ji for his beautiful comments, and also thank Anita ji and Meena for reading so nicely for us. Thank you all. Jai Gurudev.